Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. As you notice, I'm not at home. I'm giving my TEDx tomorrow, so I'm in Ithaca, getting ready, staying at this beautiful spot by the pond and a forest, so enjoying a little bit of a quiet time. So I don't have much of updates today. I thought we'll do a bit more Q&A. Um, I will say that we've recorded an absolutely great podcast today. Thanks, Janet, on benefits of skiing, cross-country skiing. So I know it's not the topic that everybody capable of following, but I hope you all can consider trying it out. If you've never cross-country skied, um, it's never too late. This is a sport that can go into any age, and it's a lot lower impact than running or even walking because of the gliding effect. It basically removes all of the substantial kind of a negative impacts on joints. Anyway, the podcast will be out in a few weeks, I presume. Janet will let us know, and you can listen to the whole conversation with former Olympic athlete from Canada, Asha Atkins, who's also my coach. So if anybody is interested in picking up this sport, feel free to reach out. I will put you in touch with her. They have an online training curriculum, which is relatively inexpensive. So yeah, let's do the questions. You know the drill. Throw them onto the chat or raise your hand and we'll unmute you. Um, Interesting comment there in the chat about the rude comments. So I don't know what that applies to, but um, I guess I got here a little bit late. Maybe there was a conversation before I got here.
No, it's a reference to why we no longer let everybody unmute
Oh, oh
themselves.
yeah. We had what's that called? Zoom bombing? Is that the term?
Yeah,
Something like.
we had another one a couple of a month ago or so, 6 weeks, something like
Oh,
that.
again? Really?
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't there. Huh. Oh well, I guess that happens still. So, um, all right. I think I talked about vascular health, right? Did I talk about this last time? This is one topic I could cover. We did a open house on our Recode today about this, and it'll be on a YouTube channel in a little bit. But I can probably go over some slides again if people are interested. It's particularly about nitric oxide. I actually don't think I did talk about that here, didn't I? No, so that'd be a good topic. Let's do it. All right. So let me put the slides on so you guys get a sense of what am I discussing here. Actually, hold on a second. Let me before I do that. And again, if you have questions, drop them in. So, oh, okay. There's a question. Let me handle it. Question about mark-ons appropriate. Yeah, you can. Any questions appropriate. If I feel the question is too narrow, I may simply text it back to you during the later part, or I can email you. But if it's general, then I don't. I think it's completely appropriate. Meantime, let me put up the. This is about 12 minute talk, so I think it's will be good for today. Okay, so the general topic was for the how does the vascular health impacts cognition, but I'm going to take it a little bit broader. So this is the topic, and this was in view of the 2024 Lancet Commission on Dementia Prevention and Intervention. I think I may have brought this up here, and I do use this heavily in my talk tomorrow. Part of it is this is probably the top current summary of recommendations for the prevention of Alzheimer's disease. So that's why it's very relevant. And it contains 14 main dementia risk factors. Sometimes we can call them dementogens. That's the term, basically saying things that will increase risk of Alzheimer's. So there's a 14 items: hypertension, high LDL, definitely linked to the vascular health, as well as immobility or inactivity, air pollution, smoking, alcohol. All of those negatively impact vasculature and, of course, diabetes and obesity. So, and So this question comes up all the time. So vascular health is all about hypertension prevention. Yes and no. I mean, of course, hypertension is very important. Hypertension is a substantial problem. It's a very common problem. It's a silent killer. It has to be managed. But the issue of vascular health is a lot bigger. It's a lot broader. Vessels are not only delivering oxygen, but they're delivering nutrients to all the tissues, and of course, they deliver it to the brain as well. And also, they do remove the junk that's generated by us living, right? So when we live, we create byproducts of our metabolism that have to be excreted. If you're not able to do so, if the vasculature is inefficient for whatever reason, you're increasing risk of accumulation of toxic waste in different parts, including the brain. Blood-brain barrier is really important. It's basically um, a natural capacity for us to separate what's good, what's not good. So if we would be able to get all kinds of things through into the brain, that would be potentially devastating, right? Because how is the body going to separate toxic versus not? So this is called the blood-brain barrier, which is a very tightly regulated structure. It's not really a structure, it's just a layer of cells that tightly blocks anything that we don't want to get into the brain. And very frequently, nerves go together with vessels. It's a very common anatomical configuration, but it also has a critical physiologic factor workings, because in reality, what happens when you parallel them together, you kind of blood vessels feed and remove the junk from the neurons, nerves, because that they highly metabolic tissue. So having them in proximity with vasculature is anatomically makes really intuitive sense. The probably number one most important booster for vasculature is the physical activity. There's been a lot of discussion which physical activity is the best, and it looks like it's what we sometimes call zone 2 activity, which would be considered something like very brisk walk, slow jog, moderate biking, moderate skiing, cross-country skiing. So things that keep your heart rate in around 60 to 70% maximum capacity. Even if you're gardening, for example, if you're gardening you know, at the pretty good pace, like you're lifting some manure bag or you're plowing something, so there could be you could be quite in that zone. So there are going to be a lot of activities that put you there, and you do need to spend some time. So you need at least 30 minutes, preferably 60 minutes, to reach the maximum benefit for the vasculature. And there's this key protein called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Basically, it serves as a fertilizer for the brain, and it's a key factor in neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is brain's capacity for the cells to reconnect to each other, to grow, and to adapt throughout the life. So that's the term neuroplasticity. There's lots of different ways of naturally boosting BDNF. Beautiful slide. Thanks, AI. So you can see that it's a diet for sure. Fatty acids, um, dark berries, green tea, chocolate, turmeric. Um, Lots of other things do that. So mental and cognitive engagement is very good for BDNF release.
Dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate. Yep. Dark chocolate. You better believe it. Of course, then there's a problem with dark chocolate being the heavy metals, the arsenic specifically. So, actually during the open house, one of our patients raised a really interesting question. She basically said, "Yeah, but then if you eat too many berries or too many beets, you're going to get too much sugar." So the point being is a lot of these things you do have to still do them in moderation. That's why there are so many different things. So I think if you just do one, it's probably going to be too little of the effect. And this is really interesting philosophical position. In medicine, generally, we prefer one treatment for one condition, like one drug for one problem. The reason for that has nothing to do with the reality of efficacy. It has only to do with the evidence base. We're basically victims. I'm going to use that word without hesitation here, and I know I'm on a recording. We are victims of our current state of research. because there is no possibility. Imagine that I would design the research that will look into effects of BDNF, everything on this picture. How would you discern what does what? There's absolutely no biologic mechanism for us to do that. It doesn't exist. And because of that, such a research will never exist in this current paradigm, shutting down an opportunity to look at our health in a much more comprehensive way. I like to call this process stacking. When you start one treatment for something and you keep on adding things quickly, when you're looking at potentially toxic drugs, that cannot be done with lightheartedness. You have to be very careful. But when you're doing it with foods that we've been eating for thousands of years, activities, intermittent fasting, you're seeing the sauna, relaxing bath. If you think about this, the risk of those things causing serious harm is trivial. But because we don't have the evidence from randomized controlled trials, there's a lot of pushback about this. And, I'm not critiquing that pushback. I'm just telling you what actually is. And because of that, you've maybe never heard of BDNF because there's no drug that will boost it, and that's sort of the short philosophical spiel here. Let's finish this up. Okay, so nitric oxide, a key molecule. Really important to know what this means. It's a regulatory molecule. If you think it's just that vasodilates, it's a bit more than that. It is vasodilate, so it's critical to keep the blood pressure well regulated. It's critical to make sure blood flow occurs in adjustment to your demands. If you're exercising, you have to dramatically increase blood pressure and blood requirement of flow to the muscle. When you're sleeping, it decreases to the muscle, etc. Actually, I know it has anti-inflammatory effects. It blocks the clots from forming, and it also helps to regulate vascular tone and stimulates formation of new blood vessels. So it's a very, very broad function. So those of you who are interested in this topic, if you ever thought, oh, like me, I used to have a lot of problems with pain on a cold. Like if I'm exposed to extreme cold, I would get my fingers start to get white and numb and painful. And this is because I was mercury poisoned in my 20s, and it took me quite a long time to figure out that the issue with this vascular issue was nitric oxide related specifically, because mercury completely destroys nitric oxide production, and basically people who are chronically mercury poisoned guaranteed to have vascular defects. And in fact, one of the most feared complications of mercury detox is vascular complications like strokes, for example. So I have to be careful with that. There's a way to measure nitric oxide. That's what the slides show. Very low cost. You can buy these strips anywhere. You don't have to buy from this company. There are other companies that make them. This one just has a nice picture that I decided to use. I don't have any connection with this company at all. So you want to aim at this kind of a nice pink color, and it's a simple 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes saliva test. Just put a strip on your tongue, fold it together, touch the other side, and look at the color. And it should be like right here where the target says. Mine is somewhere all the way to the, like not all the way to the left, but like on a border of threshold where my pointer is right here. And that's after several years of working on this. So it's a pretty important topic. It doesn't even matter why nitric oxide is decreased. If it's low, it's a problem. So there are different ways of boosting it. Of course, you may have all heard of beets being kind of a gold standard, if you will. It's not necessarily gold standard. There are lots of other foods that do that, particularly different vegetables, spinach, arugula. So if you're eating plenty of plants, you're probably getting a good amount of NO support from nitrate-rich vegetables and fruits. So rejoice if that's the case. There are supplements, but I'm not going to discuss them. I think it's a little over. We talked about hyperbaric oxygen, so I'm not going to talk about this. This is just from the other lecture. So I'm going to stop here and stop sharing and see what we got for questions for a couple more minutes before I hand it over to Mia. Mia, thanks so much for being here. So, Amy, you didn't ask your question about Marcon's success of the therapy. So this, it's very high. I mean, I would say first line of therapy for Marcon's sometimes doesn't work. Second line or third line, eventually something should work. We never start with antibiotics. MARCoNS is a nasal infection of a specific organism that often forms biofilm and excretes toxins. So sometimes patients with MARCoNS are going to present as if they have other biotoxicity like a mold or Lyme. So we screen for that quite aggressively when we're working the patients up. There's a simple nasal swab test that will tell us whether the culture is positive for MARCoNS. Thanks, Steph, for reminding about beating hearts on Monday. We are planning on doing variety of different continuous reviews of topics. By the way, earlier this week, I recorded a really interesting presentation on study showing benefits of DMT. DMT is a psychedelic substance that's now been studied for depression. So I'm not going to present that because it's a little out of scope for today. And also, I don't really think that it's a very practical item simply because realities, unfortunately, it's still a prohibited substance. But it's an interesting topic to take a look at. So I'm going to put it in a chat if anybody's interested in taking a look. So, all right. If you have cancer, do you want to increase blood vessels? Great question, Randall. So no, you don't. What you want to do is you want to make sure that the cancer does not increase the blood vessels. In fact, there is specific biologic treatments that are designed to block the cancer from forming new blood vessels, right? Because that's how cancer spread. For cancer to cause metastasis, it has to be able to form new vessels. So some of the biologic cancer therapies is targeting, blockading tumors from making new vessels. And those therapies are surprisingly don't have ton of side effects, probably in part that they're pretty specific to the tumors. So general consensus is if you're trying to boost your own BDNF, you're not risking the cancers. There hasn't been any described concerns about that. So yeah. No, so chronically low blood pressure is not associated with higher risk of Alzheimer's. Although let me caveat to this stuff, it depends on what the cause of the low blood pressure is. So if the cause of low blood pressure is over medicating or like taking too many pills or say some chronic illness, then the answer is possibly. If the blood pressure is low just because you've been born like this and you have some POTS, I wouldn't worry about that. Yeah, so the talk TEDx will be available when they publish it. Of course, when it's available, I'll share with you guys. I'll put it and you'll be able to see it. So, any other questions? Well, you know the drill. If you need to stay after we finish, by all means. Since there's no more questions, we'll just start with Mia early. Mia, I hope it's okay with you. Take whatever time you want to take. If you want to finish a little bit earlier, that's fine too. I'll stay around here for anybody who needs to talk to me afterwards. And again, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah. Um, so we're gonna go through, oh, everybody here, can you guys hear me? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we can hear you well.
Okay, perfect. It glitched black and I had this happen the other day and then no one could hear what I was saying for 15 minutes. Um, So thank you guys so much for having me back. I really appreciate it. And I enjoyed being with you guys last time. I hope that some of you guys were here for the last one. And that was where we did something that I call a mindless Zentangle. And that was where we were trying to tap into what we call a flow state. And so I'll get into that more in just a second. But I wanted to go over so I operate under something called the American Art Therapy Association, and that's like where all my licensure is through and everything like that. And they have a really good definition about how art therapy works. And so I'm just going to walk through that really fast. And so it's art therapy is integrative methods that engage the mind, body, and spirit in ways that are different from verbal articulation. So just like your regular talk therapy, it engages the kinesthetic and sensory perception and symbols uses symbols and symbolic opportunities to invite alternative modes of expression and communication. So we're gonna, in art therapy, the whole point is to be able to use different materials to kind of bring your awareness from where we all live up here in our brains down into our body and try to connect more of our body and our mind together, and then use art in that process. Art is a really amazing tool for things that you want to talk about, or like you want to express or get outside of yourself without maybe necessarily having to talk about it if you don't have the words to talk about it. Art therapy gets brought up a lot when you're talking about children, but it is really great for all ages. The military has been using it for people with PTSD since the 70s. And it's just, I mean, I'm a big fan since I'm getting a master's in it, but it is a really great thing. And I thought it was really interesting that neuroplasticity got brought up earlier, because that is something that we talk about all the time. Being art therapists, we always want to engage different parts of the brain, and we will specifically use different materials to do that. So we use something called the ETC, which is the expressive tactile continuum. That's not right, but ETC. And the whole point of that is that there's one side of things that are very rigid and very like picture-based, rigid materials, meaning materials that are going to be easier to control, versus on the other side of things, it's going to be like watercolor, inks, and different materials that are not easy to control. And our goal is to always bring balance to the person and then to the body. So finding that balance between a very literal interpretation of something and a very symbolic interpretation of something. If anybody has any questions, I love questions. So yeah, raise your hand and you can get unmuted or throw them in the chat and I will take a look at that when I can. I am going to attempt to share my screen here. And we can see if this will work for me. Share setting. Oh. All right. There you go. So this is the PDF that Janet mentioned getting sent out. If you could print it, great, but you do not have had to have printed this in any way, shape, or form. This is just a generic outline that we like to use for something that I'm going to walk you through today, which is called a body scan. So in art therapy, we do a lot of things that we call grounding techniques. And it is very much what it sounds of, like bringing ourselves awareness into our bodies and trying to focus our attention inwards and try to keep our mind from wandering. But that's really, really hard to do. So I'm going to walk you through this guided breathing and body awareness exercise. And then we're going to move into the art portion of this. If you're like, yeah, I'm not feeling being like drawing today, that is completely fine. If you didn't have a chance to download this or print this, don't stress. I will show you another way to do this, but you can do this with a stick figure that you draw on a sticky note too. And honestly, we do this with kids a lot too, where we'll lay them on the ground and pretend that we're drawing in the clouds in the sky. So if you want to like just pretend you're drawing on your wall, you're welcome to do that too. So I'm going to invite everybody to kind of settle into their seat. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. Maybe find a soft gaze. Look at the wall directly behind your computer screen. Maybe you look at your space bar, and maybe you close your eyes. And we're going to take a deep breath in and out. through this exercise, we're going to practice something called box breathing, which many of you may be familiar with already, which is where when you breathe in, you hold at the top of your breath for a few seconds, and when you breathe out, you hold at the bottom of your breath for a few seconds before you continue in that breathing rhythm. If that isn't going to work for you, completely fine. There is no right or wrong way to do anything in art therapy, and this goes for this exercise as well. So just continue to deep breaths in and out. Feel whatever you're sitting on, your feet on the floor. Maybe you have your hands on your lap. Maybe your laptop is sitting on it and you're conscious of where the device is touching your body. Now, I'm going to invite you to imagine going from the top of your head down to the bottom of your toes. You're just scanning, just slowly moving down through your body, from the top of your head to your eyebrows, to your nose, to your mouth, your collarbones, your shoulders, your ribs, your elbows, your belly button, your legs, your knees, your ankles, and your toes. And I'm going to invite you to ask yourself, what has the loudest voice in my body today? What is my body saying? Maybe it's your shoulders, and they're really tight. Maybe it's that it's really uncomfortable in the position you're sitting. Acknowledge that part of yourself. Adjust to find comfort if that is something you are able to do. If what you're noticing and what your body is saying cannot be adjusted by a sitting position, that is okay. I want you to speak inward at wherever that is. Maybe it's your elbow, maybe it's your pinky toe. And say, I see what you are saying. Thank you for bringing my attention to it. I appreciate the job that you're doing, and I'm going to take it from here. We are okay. We're going to take a few more breaths in and out, holding at the top and the bottom. And now I'm going to invite you to bring your awareness back to your body. Maybe you start by wiggling your toes, wiggling your fingers, opening your eyes, shrugging your shoulders, and bring your attention back to the group. I am opening up the floor if anybody would like to share what that experience is like. If anybody wants to throw that in the chat for them, what that was like for them to be walked through that. Otherwise, we can move into the art portion of this. Oh, how do I see the chat? Okay. I, for some reason, when I'm sharing my screen, can't see the chat. So we'll, after I'm done sharing, move into if anybody has questions or it was open to sharing what that experience was like for them. So that part of your body that was speaking to you, that was asking for a little more love and attention today, it's really easy to be negative towards that. It is so easy to have resentment, particularly if it's holding there for a really, really long time. And so this exercise is about inviting compassion to all parts of your body and to what's saying they need a little more love today, instead of saying, oh, that's my bad ankle. It'd feel really kind of gross if somebody kept referring to you as, oh, That's my bad friend. So this is about inviting kindness and grace into our own bodies and saying, yeah, you're doing your job. You're saying that I need a little more attention there. And I'm telling you, I can move forward from that. So now, either on the outline that you have, and I, in theory, should be able to draw on the screen. We shall find out. Let me see here. Oh, can everybody see that? All right. I'm glad that worked. So for those of us that don't have a material that is, or didn't have a chance to print anything out, that is a-okay. I just wanted to give you guys the option if that's what you want. But, I'm personally not feeling like that body outline is going to be what I'm going to do today. So, maybe that's my body today. That's my outline. I'm going to switch to a darker pen really fast. And there's my head and my shoulders and my feet and my arms. And I'm going to invite you to take a moment, remember what was talking to you today. And my shoulders are really talking to me. I've been at a computer all day. They're really hunched up. And so I'm going to draw what that feels like. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes and let you do that. Be creative with it. If you have colors, if you've got markers, go for it. What color was that feeling like? Maybe it was a shape, maybe it was a pattern. Mine are really chaotic, but I'm also feeling, I'm going to invite you to go broader now. What feels good today? What feels full? And when I say that, I'm going to show you what the sunshine and the joy looks like outside. So my dog was really cute this morning, and we had to go on a really nice walk, and I had a really good cup of coffee, and that made my heart really happy. So I'm gonna pick this really bright green. And that's what my joy felt like today. Once you've kind of done that, I'm going to invite you to picture if what was hurting you and what was filling you with joy today were talking to each other. And this is very abstract. So if you're like, this person sounds crazy, I have no clue what you're talking about, just do what sits with you. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. It's all okay. There's no right or wrong way to do any of this. But if my shoulders and my joy were talking to each other, I could imagine my joy saying, it's all good. It's sunshiny outside. Just relax. Let your muscles relax. Maybe my joy is spreading calmness over my shoulders. I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that I can see the chat. But if anybody has questions or wants to share what this was like for them, I'm gonna open it up at this point. And you're also welcome to say too that this is like totally out of your wheelhouse. I never want to do this ever again. That is completely valid to this too. Not everything, not every directive an art therapist brings into a session is going to land with every person every time.
Folks, you can unmute yourselves now.
Someone says my toes hurt this morning. Yeah. Was that, were you aware of what that felt like? Or was that like something that you didn't realize was that's specifically where it was? And you don't have to answer to if you don't want to.
Yes, I was aware of the pain on the toes.
How,
Um, and I massaged them, but I don't know where that came from. They were hurting.
yeah,
Maybe the tension while I was sleeping, who knows?
yeah. Was it weird for anybody to kind of be asked to offer this grace and kindness to what was hurting your body?
To answer Irene's question, yeah, we're definitely gonna do something on oral health. We did have a biologic dentist who talked about this, but that was a long time ago. So we'll look into that. It's a great topic.
Linda had her hand raised.
Yeah, I just a minute, let me get this off. I'm happy. I'm grateful every morning I wake up and my body is just doing better because I'm learning about it more each day. I'm I'm happy. My body's happy.
Thank you for sharing that. Was this new for anybody to be asked to communicate with your body in this way, to like kind of have a conversation with it? Was it weird for anybody?
Here, we've done so much work at this site with our bodies over the years that it's not natural, not only here, but in taking it into other places too.
That's amazing.
We've
But
done a
it,
lot of work here at this site with our bodies.
that's really amazing. And I will share that when I go into a lot of spaces and do things with art therapy, being asked to consider your body as a whole and not just parts is very unusual for a lot of people. I'm just saying it feels good to do this type of exercise. I'm watching, sorry. Yes. Yeah, yeah. It's really easy to like absorb all the chaos that's going on into our bodies, and sometimes we don't always notice it. A big part of where art therapists put like do art therapy is this idea that when we hold things in, it like festers and it sits and it doesn't do us any good. It just kind of sits there like a secret and it's kind of just brewing and it makes things worse. And so then by getting it outside of yourself through talking, through art, through checking in with your body and saying, "Ooh, I see that." And I'm going to say something to you and I'm going to draw about it. it kind of gets it outside of yourself and allows it to be a little freer of what's sitting in or on or around you. All right. I think that's about all I have. If anybody has, again, any questions, any comments, please. Thank you guys so much for doing this with me. And I know it's a little, well, maybe not for you guys and all the work that you've done, but in a lot of spaces I walk into, people are like, yeah, this is a little wacky, a little weird. But I really appreciate you guys being willing to do this with me and having me back again. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mia, so much. I think everybody's enjoyed it. Hopefully we'll see you back at some point soon. Otherwise, I'm gonna hang around here. Janet, what do we have next week? Next week. Oh, okay. So next week I'll do the wellness talk, and we'll have our Dr. Yeager, who is an advisor for AIM, who's going to be back. She's a former clinical professor emeritus at Colorado School of Medicine, and she's also a known Sufi master, so she'll probably be doing mindfulness with us in that domain. And we'll see you all next Friday. If you need to talk to me, if you're my patient, stick around. Otherwise, I'll see everybody next Friday. Enjoy spring. How long we have, who knows?